Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm sure more people will trickle in. We're expecting 11 churches to be represented, 5 nonprofits, and just over 40 people registered to join us this morning. So thank you, welcome. Today, we're going to have the presentation from Arapahoe County Commissioner Carrie Warren-Gully, Executive Director of South Metro Housing Options, Corey Reitz, and Littleton City Council members Pamela Grove and Stephen Barr to present what all is going on with the housing situation in our community. So, thank you. There we go. Some Zoom requests. We asked for you to put your full name and organization in your Zoom name tag. In this small screen format, if you click the little 3-dot ellipses in the top right corner, it gives you the option to rename. If you haven't done that, that'd be great, just so people can know who's who. As people are presenting, please jot down questions in the chat. I'll be monitoring that. And when we move into our Q&A second half, I'll be kind of moderating and help bring in questions. You know, if we have 3 or 4 that are hitting at the same point, be able to moderate that. So without further ado, I'll pass the baton off to Kathryn, and she'll be helping guide this process this morning. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Sean, and thanks to everybody for being here. You know, Love Inc.'s mission is to mobilize local churches to transform lives and communities and to put God's love on display in the process of it. One of our 10 core values is unity, and I would say that that's a really vital part of who we are and what we do, because we represent so many churches as partners and many more churches in the community that work with us but maybe haven't actually stepped into the full partnership role. We focus on the most high level of what we're doing together. And you'll see that today in this. We really want to use this opportunity to share with you what's happening in the community so that you as churches can understand and possibly work with us in some of the next steps. And there are other issues besides housing, but I want to focus on housing now because this is one of the key initiatives of the strategic plan that Love Inc. board has established and staff is working into. And that is to share those opportunities and needs with churches in the community, because we feel that the church has a role to play. I know every one of our congregations is concerned about the housing crisis. And many of you are doing things already. We want to celebrate that and work with you on that. But we also really want to investigate, what does it mean to take some next steps in that? So today, you're hearing from the municipalities locally. I do want to make a point that we're so grateful for Commissioner Carrie Warren-Gully here from Arapahoe County. But our Love Inc., this particular Love Inc., because we're part of a national movement, serves part of Jefferson County and part of Douglas County too. We are physically located in Arapahoe County, and that's why we're really asking for that input here. But we are beyond that as well. In this forum, we would like to duplicate this in the future with focus on other nonprofits doing work and other Love Incs. Around the country that are doing similar work. So as we close this, after we hear from our 3 presenters, 4 presenters, actually 3 entities, then I'll share some possible next steps with you. And in all of that, I ask for your prayers and your partnership, because we can do so much more together than any one entity, individual, or church can do alone. So thank you for joining us in that. Thanks, Sean, for kind of giving us a starting point on this. I just want to give you an overview of what to expect. The presentations will be 7 minutes apiece for the county, for Corey, Ritz, and for the city. I will be timing that, and I've given them a little bit of grace in that. So we may, I think we have time if we need to go a little bit over that, but we'll be trying to keep that as tight as possible. And we also realize that there is a lot of jargon in this these conversations. We've tried to pull that back as much as possible, but if you have any questions about that, please include it in chat and we'll try to answer those right away without interrupting the presentations. You've heard that we'll be muted and no videos until we go into Q&A time. And we are recording this so that it can be seen later and shared later. So with that, it is my privilege to introduce to you Commissioner Carrie Warren-Gully from the County of Arapahoe. And Kerry, take it away. And I think Terry is giving her presentation ability.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Kathryn, for organizing this with your group. It's so vital, the work that you all do in our community. And I'm excited to talk to you about our housing and what we need to do in Arapahoe County. This slide here today is just to kind of give you a little bit of a feel of the kind of continuum of housing that we talk about. And you look at it down on the bottom. We have everything on the left screen, on the left side of the screen for people, our neighbors that are experiencing homelessness. And then the next step would be that emergency shelters. The next would be transitional housing. And as you see, we kind of go through that continuum of housing. We have a diverse community in our area. And because of that, we want to make sure that we have a diversity in our housing. And I think you're going to see here during the presentation that we need to work on that diversity a little bit, particularly in the lower income area. So just to give you a feel for what what area I'm going to be focusing on today, if you can advance the slide. I represent District 1, which obviously is on the far left side of your screen. And that is pretty much where a lot of us are housed and work in. It's the Littleton, Sheridan, Inglewood, kind of western part of Centennial area. And
Excuse me, Carrie, 1 second. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm hearing from Mike Wright that he's not seeing slides. Is anybody else not seeing slides?
Oh.
Okay, so
I can see them, so I'm not sure, but I can.
Okay, so
I can see them too. Just plain
see.
stay. I'm fine.
okay, I'm not sure what to say, Mike, and
What we could do is, Sean, could you email the deck to Mike so he can just
I'll
pull
do
it up?
that. I can do
Okay,
that.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, good. All right, so wonderful technology here. Thank you for that. So anyway, you know, Arapahoe County is a very big county, so I'm going to be focusing mostly on the District 1 area. And we are pretty unique because we're the older part of the county as far as our infrastructure and our housing goes. So we are somewhat unique in that. If you go out to the Eastern Plains, you're going to see a lot of newer development. And because of that, you're going to see that we have some pretty singular types of housing. We also have 2 major corridors, obviously a lot more than that, but Santa Fe is a major corridor as well as Broadway. And that brings a lot of different opportunities for people to work in our community, but also opportunities for housing along that transit that gives us the ability to get people to and from places because of the transit opportunities. The next slide you're going to see is information that was collected from 2016 to 2020. And when we talk about being burdened by housing costs in Arapahoe County, we talk about if you are paying more than 30% of your income on your housing, you are considered burdened by your housing. It doesn't leave you the ability to use income on other parts of your life. So from 2016 to 2020, this is the data you're going to be seeing. Renters are obviously the most likely to be experiencing this housing burden. And over 50% of all renters in the county of Arapahoe County pay more than 30% in 2020. So that's a concern of ours. We've also found that 4 times in 2020, compared to 2016, 4 times as many households with mortgages are now paying more than 30%. And nearly almost all households with incomes less than $20,000 were paying more than 30%, either as owners or renters. So if you can kind of advance that, I think you'll see some of those graphics as we go through here. Yeah, keep on going with the advancing. It's really just to show you that this is, as Kathryn said, somewhat of a crisis. People are spending more and more on their housing. That means they have less income to spend on vitals like food and assistance. We in Arapahoe County, if you can go to the next slide, you'll see that the majority of housing that we have, particularly in District 1, in my part of the county, is we have single family homes. And so we mostly have that, and that doesn't build that diversity that we need. And remember, that diversity is not only economic diversity, but needs that we have as we go through our lives. If you're a young professional, you have a type of housing that you need. If you're a family, you have a type of housing. And when you're a senior, you have a different type of housing you need. So we want to make sure we have that spectrum and we have that diversity. If you can keep scrolling through those, again, you'll see that we are very heavily reliant on single family detached units in this particular part of the county. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that Arapahoe County did a needs assessment, and they came up with this exact information. We have a need for more rental housing units, especially in our most low income households. So remember, almost anybody who makes less than $20,000 is going to be burdened by housing in our community. If you go on to the next, there you go, House Bill 21-1217 or 71 from last year worked at the state level to use some of their one-time dollars from the federal government through ARPA, which is the American Rescue Act plan. They put forward some very strategic values and policies in which they would like for cities, municipalities, and counties to include in their zoning to qualify for some of the housing. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see that in Arapahoe County, we have met a lot of those requirements, but we are working on others. So eventually we're going to be working on potentially adding accessory dwelling units, as well as some additional language changes. I want to shift just really quickly out of that overview of land development in Arapahoe County to what we did with our American Rescue Act plan dollars. And as you can see, we really tried to take, well, we took $25 million of the money that we got to go towards homelessness and programs for people experiencing homelessness, and a large portion of that, a $10 million part that is geared towards innovative, affordable housing grants. Then next, I'd like to share with you something that's going to be coming up that I think you all will need to know about. And that is that right now we are in a public health emergency that has been established by the federal government, and we have received some additional funding for that. One of those things is the emergency rental assistance, in which we've been able to give 3 months worth of assistance for rent and utilities. That money is coming to an end soon. We also have used some of our dollars to experiment and pilot with a legal eviction program to keep people from going into evictions. If you can go to the next slide, you'll see that we also are going to have some changes on the side of our human services, which is where we give a lot of our cash assistance and food assistance. In January, it's expected that the public health emergency is going to go away. And that means that we are going to have less dollars to give people. I found that the senior citizen was probably most impacted in this. With public health assistance, they are getting $250 in cash assistance for new food and nutrition and that type of thing. When we move away from that in January, they will go back to the original amount of $20. So that is a huge difference.
Carrie, I want to thank you for all of that and remind everybody that you will get a copy of these slides. You've had wonderful, wonderful input. I'm going to ask you to wrap it up. We've gone a bit over, but
Yes.
it's exceptional information. So is there any other closing comment you'd like to say?
I think other than just wanting to give you a heads up on that assistance work that's going to be happening, I see that really affecting the work that you all do in our community, providing food and assistance in those types of programs. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Commissioner Warren-Gully. And it's my privilege to introduce Corey Ritz, who's Executive Director at South Metro Housing Options, which is the Littleton Housing Authority. And we've worked closely on so many things. Corey, thank you for being here with us today.
Absolutely. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you, Kathryn, and thank you to Love Inc. for inviting me to participate in such an important topic. I am Corey Ritz, Executive Director of South Metro Housing Options, and South Metro Housing Options is the Littleton Housing Authority doing business as South Metro Housing Options. So we've been around the community a very long time. A lot of people still probably don't know what we do and why we do it. I think that's in part because of housing authorities in general over the years have had a bit of a bad rap and some negative stereotypes. So they've kind of flown under the radar, which I don't believe in. Housing is such an important topic in our community that I think there's a lot of things we need to share. So that's kind of been, since I've started in my role, kind of been our approach, is to become more involved and let people know what we're actually doing. In terms of our programming, we serve a variety of demographics, from seniors and disabled to families. We do it through both physical units and through vouchers. So you may have heard of housing choice vouchers or Section 8 vouchers. Those are vouchers that participants can use out in the community that are not owned or operated by South Metro Housing Options. So, those are kind of the two ways we help. And like most affordable housing agencies, our mission involves providing safe, stable, affordable, clean housing for the people in the community that we serve. It's a very basic principle, but it's one that oftentimes is a huge community need. So that is really our mission, is to help make a stronger community by helping individuals, families, and all those different demographics that we help. Can you go to the next slide, please? There, thank you. We have several projects we're working on right now. It's been a busy few years. So the first one is our foster youth to independence program that we received additional vouchers, housing choice vouchers, for foster youth aging out of the system or who have already aged out that either were homeless or about to be. This has proven to be a very challenging program. It's been a great example of just how some of the demographics that we serve, just how high of needs and all the challenges that they have. And so it's been a struggle, is the reality. We have a continuum of care that we provide supportive services with a variety of our partners, community partners, and it still has proven to be very difficult. So while we've housed 12 foster youth or former foster youth to date, we're certainly to the point where we're going to have to take a break and put a hold on the program so we can regroup and try to figure out a better way to, and more ways to serve this population and all their challenges. The next program that we're really excited about is our brand new development. We actually broke ground on this development this week, and we were delayed. This is our first project in about 30 years, so we're very excited about it, but it certainly is been an eye opener to just the process and getting through it. And construction has been no different, as we were delayed immediately and not able to start exactly when we had hoped, but construction has begun. Dirt is being moved. It will be a 51 unit senior property for those 62 and over. There'll be 51 units and all one bedroom. So again, very excited that we are able to do something like this for the community that we haven't been able to in a really long time. The other program that we're very excited about is working with Habitat. So we had 59 formerly 59 scattered site single family homes and duplexes that were formerly in the public housing program. And we have transitioned that, and we are selling those homes and duplexes to folks who are working with Habitat for Humanity and working through their program. So we're able to sell them at a very reduced rate, and they will go into a land trust, which means we get to sell them then to all future subsequent buyers at also an affordable rate. So they will be essentially forever affordable for sale units in the community, which is not a thing these days. So we're very happy to be able to help in that area. And just in terms of diversity of housing, it's something different than multifamily apartments. So we're happy to be able to do both. In terms of collaboration, because of the challenges and this housing topic being so difficult, we certainly believe in collaboration. This area isn't for the faint of heart. So working with city staff, city council, community partners, we have a Littleton Housing Task Force that SMHO plays a big role in, and a lot of you on the call today. It takes a lot of agencies and a lot of people to address such a huge challenge like housing. And then last but not least, working on education and just making sure people are aware in the community of what's going on in relation to housing. So if you could go, thank you. This slide I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. It's just a really good example of an illustration of where we've been and where we're at in terms of housing costs and the ridiculous amount of how prices have increased. And the bottom line is wages have not, kept pace over the last few years, quite a few years with housing costs, and it's put us in a really bad situation.
Yes. Corey, you've got about a minute to a minute and a half. And remember that people get these slides because I know there's actually really good information on these.
Yeah, so this is really probably the last slide then I need to talk about. In general, affordable housing and talking about it is really difficult just because people call it so many different things. Affordable housing has some people are uncomfortable with that term even. So we call it attainable housing, workforce housing, missing middle, we call it all sorts of things. So the next few slides are not universal. We just, to try to make it easy and break it down and easier to digest, we've kind of broken it down into three categories: affordable, workforce, and then market rate. But again, it's not universal, and it's just not easy in black and white, because a lot of the folks that, we have some examples of different professions, for example, but some of the folks that are in the next bracket in the workforce housing, depending on their household size, they really would qualify under affordable housing. So this affordable housing group is generally who we work with. So agencies like ourselves work with this group 0 to 60% AMI. But the reality is too, all three groups and housing types are important for a community, because especially these days, the needs are across the board. It's no longer just 0 to 30% AMI folks need assistance or need help finding affordable housing. It's 0 to sometimes up to 120% AMI, depending on the community. So this hopefully just helps illustrate the different types of folks that need help, because oftentimes also the view of, especially this affordable group, 0 to 60 or 0 to 30 or 40, they're seen potentially as able-bodied that don't want to work, or and they're just negative connotations. So these are really our elderly, people with disabilities, and our lower paying jobs that can't afford anything community. So that's probably time. So
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, and thank you, Terry, for flipping through the next ones. I want you to pause just for a moment on the one after this. And just know that, again, you guys will see these in a follow-up email because it is excellent information. Thank you. With that, I'd like to introduce our city council members from Littleton City Council, Councilmember Pamela Grove and Councilmember Stephen Barr. Thank you for your service to the community, and we're eager to hear your updates on housing and what you're working on there.
You want to go to the next slide, please? Okay, just a little bit about what Littleton has done. We completed a envision process where we had a comprehensive plan, a strategic plan for the next 20 years. It also includes a transportation plan about the future of our community. Part of that is defining the character of our community, what we want our community to be in terms of active, stable populations, a good destination for visitors, great neighborhoods, that it's a welcoming community, that it's friendly to seniors and families in all walks of life. Character also includes the physical aspect. How does a building look? How much open space is there? How much is open space relative to paving? And if it's more rural, which is more on the edges of our community, then you're going to have a higher level of open space than if it's more urban. As part of this envision process and part of this comprehensive plan that we developed, we have noted, based on the projections for population increase, which is expected to rise from about 47,000 to possibly up to 76,000 in terms of the next 20 years, that we're going to need more housing units. And so based on our comprehensive plan, we have developed a code. The code's for developers and it's very technical, but what it does is define what our neighborhoods look like. And this is part of our overall strategic plan for housing diversity. We want different types of homes catering to different types of individuals. Starter homes, workforce housings, market rate housings. This means duplexes, patio homes for seniors, and affordable housing. On the other end of the continuum that Kerry talked about earlier is our homelessness plan. It is a comprehensive, multifaceted plan to deal with our homeless population. And it started with a study that we did with DU to understand what the causes are and the challenges. And we have started in the process of implementing a plan. We have money from 3 cities, Littleton, Sheraton, and Inglewood. We're working together, as well as funding from the government, ARPA funding. And it's a whole process where we have community outreach, which was already begun to help people understand what services are available. We've already hired a coordinator. We're going to have a navigation center. Housing has been purchased so that people can live together in more of that social setting, as well as learning skills in the community so that they are ready to transition to independence. And next slide, I'm going to turn it over to Steve.
Thanks, Pam. And Kathryn, thank you and everyone for being on here today. I'm going to talk about what we're doing in Littleton with our inclusionary housing policy that is actually going to be coming up before council here very shortly. But I also want to kind of bring this as kind of the last speaker to that larger context of what we're the challenge that all municipalities in this area and in the metro area are kind of faced with. So on this slide, you know, with text that's too small to read, obviously, basically we've had a company that's done analytics for us to see how we can get at a lot of the things that both Commissioner Carrie Warren-Gully and Corey were speaking to before, targeting specific segments of income, targeting specific segments of like accessibility or attainability in a policy that is then included and incorporated into our unified land use code. And so I've copied and pasted the table on here out of the inclusionary policy recommendations. And so there's a link there that you can look through the entire study. But really this table kind of outlines 2 potential tracks for developments to take in the future, one being majority affordable developments, and then one policy that is going to ultimately apply to all of our housing that is ultimately built. And that housing that is for, essentially all the housing that's going to be built, there will be some portion of it that will have affordable or attainable options built into it if those housing developments are over a certain size. But I think a big part of this too is that we'll also be allowing developers and groups that are building housing to not just do that, but also to essentially buy in the option to essentially buy into a fund that supports the maintenance and upkeep of our affordable and attainable housing throughout the city. And this is incredibly important. It is oftentimes the case that affordable housing is lost through just lack of operational and maintenance kind of investments. And so putting money into this pot will allow us to keep the affordable housing stock that we already have and keep it to a high quality standard, which I think is incredibly important for the folks obviously living there. And then that second track being majority affordable development, we'll have abilities within our land use code to essentially waive certain types of fees, waive certain types of restrictions on the location, size, density, et cetera, of what those housing can be, as long as a majority of 80% or more are actually within that attainable income range for folks in their housing. So that's something we are doing on a local level. I don't want to kind of stop before I kind of put this into a broader context. I also sit on the Denver Regional Council of Governments Board of Directors. And a large part of what DRCOG does is something called their Metro Vision Plan. And to put the context of growth, not just for Littleton, but for the entire Denver metro area into context, we're anticipating a growth of about 20% of the population by 2040. That's true. That is going to happen. There's not really, I think I put 2050 in there, but that's another 1.5 million people by 2040 that every municipality throughout the area is going to have to accommodate. And ultimately, what this really means is that if we are using the land use codes, the practices of 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we're going to continue to push our housing out further and further into the mountain areas, further out. This is going to do a lot of things. It's going to just really weaken our regional transportation programs. It's going to put more people into cars who are ultimately going to be making our air quality worse. So there's a huge environmental aspect to actually looking at ways we can do infill projects and slightly higher density housing without necessarily having to build the entire metro area into a high rise. It's very possible. And honestly, in terms of emergency preparedness, the longer that all these municipalities in our area kind of hold out on some of these more progressive policies about diversity of housing and higher densities, these houses are going to be further and further encroaching in on wildfire prone areas as well. So the potential for disaster actually is going to increase dramatically unless we start now, unless we as all these municipalities, all these counties, all these communities start thinking about how do we accommodate that growth in a smart way that that makes sense for the city of Littleton, that makes sense for Centennial, that makes sense for Arapahoe County, and we can all have individual and unique plans about it. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thanks. I've got about a minute more for your wrap up from the city. Pam, will you be doing that?
Yes, next slide, please.
Thank you.
There's many advantages to affordable housing, and the inclusionary housing ordinance that is being proposed compensates developers to be able to build this housing and provide affordable units. Some things to consider is that already we have quite a few affordable housing units downtown and outside of downtown, and somebody has to pay for the affordable housing. So if you have 5% affordable housing and 95 isn't, rents for those people are probably going to be impacted. Also, a lot of these incentives reduce parking, increase density, increase height, decrease open space. So it does impact the quality of life of all the people in a multifamily building or area. People would argue that high multifamily units impact their view corridors, and some of these incentives can impact the character of downtown. Next slide, please. So what can you do as church members? Be aware of what the cities are doing, make referrals where appropriate, volunteer. Your innovative ideas to encourage homeowners to rent or sell their property at a reduced rate is very helpful. Encouraging people that have an extra bedroom in their house because their children are out of the house, and to rent it to somebody who may need it. All of these are just fabulous ideas, and you have the reach to do this. And also continue with your great Love Inc. programs, Renewed Treasures, the ones that help people find housing, the ones that help people with jobs, counseling. They're fabulous programs and supplement all the things we do. So thank you for everything you do. And back to you, Kathryn.
Thank you, Council Member Grove and Barr and Corey and Kerry. Thank you very much. I have to confess, if you talk to my husband, he would tell you I'm very time challenged, chronologically challenged, and I just could not cut you guys off at 7 or 8 minutes. So we're a little bit over the time that we had wanted for the presentation. I'll try to go quickly through some next steps from a Love Inc. perspective, and then we'll get into the Q&A part. So I apologize for that, but I'm so incredibly grateful for the amount of information you've just shared with us. And Pam, you shared some things about what's going on with us. The Impact Program and Navigators Program, those are things that are really intentionally walking alongside people. The bottom line is we want you as churches to send folks to us and let us start that relational process with you, through you. The collaboration you've heard with South Metro Housing Options and other local nonprofits, that's critical to what Love Inc. does to bring the churches into those things. And Sean sits on the Change the Trend Network every Thursday morning. There's a lot of conversation about what's happening with people who are housing insecure or homeless in our community. And we have an ear to that, and we're bringing that to the churches. And Pamela, you shared the home share program. I think it's important. I think that's a potential. It's a big ask for people to open a home in their room, but there are organizations out there doing it. The one that we worked with last year, Open Up, we were so impressed with, and sadly they closed for lack of funding. So it's not an easy challenge that we have, but the church is the biggest entity in our community. When you pull us all together and we have an actual mandate to love our neighbors and to house and feed and clothe. So we're in this together. Next slide, Terry, thank you. We will be offering another session like this early 2023, and we're going to focus more on some of the organizations that are doing work in our community. I would love to see if anybody on this call would like to be a part of a small group that just sits and explores this a bit more. With Love Inc., with our leadership, and with leadership from different churches, we're ready to see where God's calling us in this.